And for more on this, we are turning now to NewsNation national security contributor, former FBI special agent and CIA officer Tracy Walder. Tracy, thanks for joining us on this.
Thank you for having me, Natasha, and thank you for covering this.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And, you know, it really left such an impression on me when you told your own story on our network before. That you left the FBI after you experienced sexual harassment. I appreciate the breadth of experience that you're bringing to this discussion. These women tell me what they experienced was total powerlessness behind federal prison walls. The assault went from the very top with the warden to the guards, even the prison chaplain. And when they would report the abuse, there was such retaliation, solitary confinement for months, or over incarceration. What is going through your mind when you are hearing these women's stories?
What's going through my mind is just really how pervasive it is, right? You know, we talked before, they talked before about the fact that it's actually continuing, even though Dublin has been shut down, and rightly so. These women are very courageous in that you think about sort of the chain of command, right, that exists at a prison. And as you mentioned, it is very much pervasive, right, from the top all the way down. And the fact that they came forward is obviously extremely commendable. But at the same time, they must have probably been shocked that this was occurring really all the way at the top. I think that was probably the most surprising to them. And now they're probably feeling re-victimized in that a mistrial has been declared.
Now let's talk about that. Daryl Dirty Dick Smith maintaining his innocence. The defense telling jurors that there's a lack of any physical or DNA evidence. They're really hammering this point, even in their opening statement. Let's take a listen to what one former inmate says Smith said to her.
And he leaned back on the chair and put his feet up and said, "You're a convicted felon. I'm a federal officer. Who do you think they're going to believe? You don't have a word that I can't use on air, but in other words, so the audience can understand me, it would mean ejaculate. So people can understand what I'm talking about is you don't have my physical evidence in your hands or on your clothing, so you can't, there's no way I'm going to get prosecuted."
Now, what do you make of the fact that Smith told this alleged victim, you don't have my insert word for DNA evidence here? Who will believe you? I mean, is this going to be an issue again in September when we see this retrial?
Unfortunately, I do think this is going to be an issue, not because I don't believe these women. I do believe these women, but I think the problem is there are stigmas right across society, and I do think this is why this may have ended in a mistrial, in that part of the jury, not all of them, but some of them may have not believed their testimony simply because they are convicted felons. And the reality is we cannot stigmatize these individuals for the rest of their lives, and they are entitled to be safe when they're in prison. And listen, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I tend to deal almost solely in facts. But the fact that there isn't a shred of evidence when you have the warden who's been convicted, the chaplain, all of those individuals, tells me that that's problematic in and of itself. But I do think an investigation needs to be done in how evidence was concealed and was covered up. I've been in prisons before. There are plenty of CCTVs, and I want to know what happened to all of that.
Yeah, it's such a good point you bring up. These women tell me that many of the cameras simply were not functioning in the prison, unfortunately. And as you mentioned, this whole case hinges on testimony. The defense really making a point here. They're saying, hey, these are convicted felons. Are convicted felons not to be believed on the stand because of their history?
Listen, it's hard, right? As a former law enforcement official, it wasn't my first place that I would want my evidence to come from because people are biased. Human beings have these biases, and we have to recognize that. But when you have this sheer volume of individuals coupled with an over $100 million that settlement, and the prison itself being closed, I think we have to look at the totality of all of this. And these women, in my opinion, are far more than just their convictions. Everyone is. And they are entitled to see these perpetrators behind bars. But this is probably what is the most problematic in terms of a conviction here.
Tracy, very quickly, we're seeing a lot of viewer comments and outrage pouring in, several suggesting only female guards should be allowed in these facilities. It stood out to me that the survivors I spoke with said the abuse also came from the female guards. Wendy Ponzo, who we see in the piece alleging abuse at the hands of the prison chaplain, suggests every correctional officer should be required to wear a body camera at all times. Your thoughts on this?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And you saw me sort of shaking my head initially when that viewer had suggested it should be all females. females also perpetrate some of this, as just as you mentioned before. And so I think 24 continuous hours of body cam footage that they cannot control on their own is exactly what's probably needed in this.
Tracy Walder, appreciate the perspective as always. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.